Great. So my name's Shauna OMeara, and this is an excerpt from my story, Heart Emoji at the End of the World, from On the Premises, issue 32. So my character, Tash, is trapped under a collapsed office building. In the blue phone light, the cavern closes in. Is the air thinner? It seems thinner. The stain has crossed the floor, tamping the dust into thick grey sludge. Thread by wicking thread, the water explores my clothing, pushes its chill into the space around my heart. I shiver as the woman I can't see groans again. I'm going to die down here. I try 911 a second time, futile. I howl for help. Buzzing in my hand. There are roadblocks, city-bound. No one is getting in or out. He doesn't have to say it. No one is entering to find me, and I won't be getting out. A warm tear meanders down my cheek. That's why I texted, to tell you not to hold the bunker open for me. As I watch the sending function cycle and finally transmit, my words strike me as being like that part of the relationship, the really shitty bit near the end where you don't care anymore, where you say things like, "Don't wake it up for me," and "dinner's in the freezer." When we had embarked on our trial separation, I had bought up the manner of our belongings, splitting the cars, furniture and mementos. The discussion had descended into accusation and tears, and so we had let the subject drop until if and when there was ever a divorce. I guess it's odd then that amidst talk of my tosing our union, our sharing of the bunker was never in question. Were we just not that selfish? Did neither of us hate the other to cast them out into nuclear winter? Or did a part of us hope that, should we ever have need of the bunker, all the little annoyances would have burned away with the fires of the world, stripping us back to the bare human essentials? One of those had to be love, right? So Tash for me, basically both characters, Daniel and Tash, developed very much in tandem with each other. As an idea of a young couple that had gotten together from college and had basically started to go through the motions of just being a couple, because that's kind of the pattern that their lives fell into. So there was sort of this assumption that they would go from being a couple to being engaged to being married to having the house to having the kids, and hadn't really had this real discussion about whether that was actually equally what they both wanted. So Tash is a character who really fears commitment and tethering, and so for her, she was certainly happy to be in a relationship, but had gotten to the point where she'd gone almost too far, to the point that she couldn't back out anymore. So for me, it was just this exploration of a person who's kind of backed into that corner a little bit of realising that probably the conversation should have taken place years ago. Daniel's a character that is certainly the one who's the believer in the relationship as it stands, but he's started to realise from seeing the way that his partner is going just through the motions of life that it's just not working. But he is also has put too many eggs in the basket. So he has invested so much time and so much effort and love into this person that he's finding it hard to let go as well. So there's a point in the story where I say, they talked about splitting everything up and going their separate ways, but he's the one who still can't do that. He's still not ready to let go of what they have, and that's partly, and that's not even the bunker, it's just everything. So that's the reason that they're doing a trial separation, almost as a preparation for, yes, they probably would have gotten divorced, but he's at that point where he's an indecisive sort of person as well, so he just can't pull the pin on that. For me, I think a character should have a really solid, actionable goal, even if that's a goal that changes through the arc of their story. So often you'll find characters will have a goal that they start with in a story, and then as the story progresses, they realise that's no longer actually the thing that they want. But the fact that they have that, particularly if it's a goal that the reader can really get behind as something that they would root for as well, I think that that's definitely something that gives a place for the reader to latch onto right from the start. And then if you can then couple that to the character having really interesting weaknesses and flaws that make getting that goal much harder, I think that then gives you really, really good balance of sort of internal obstacles as well as whatever the external obstacles are that you've put in the way of that character, because it's very tempting to sort of keep throwing external problems at the character in the form of action or interpersonal conflict to make a character, not able to achieve their goals. But sometimes the big obstacles actually come from within. So if you can give characters flaws and weaknesses that make that harder, then you can have these private moments that aren't action-based, where the character still has doubts and fears as well, that the reader can also empathise with. So the one that I thought of that I've sort of recently encountered is the character of John LaRoche from the film adaptation. He's played by Chris Cooper. And he's basically depicted as this sort of scruffy, down-on-his-luck guy who's missing some of his front teeth, whose goal in life is to collect and breed these very rare ghost orchids. And the reason I find him an interesting character is that he could have been drawn as sort of this very cliche hippie or redneck type rural kind of guy, and sort of come with the baggage of everything we've seen in movies before of those kinds of characters. But he's actually depicted with this amazing interior beauty. He's got absolute scientific passion for the plant that he's after, but he's got these amazing views on love and life and how the world works that then becomes sort of the envy of characters in the movie that would otherwise consider themselves to be higher class than him. And so he's one of these characters, though, that I think what the movie does really well is that everything we know about John LaRoche is taken from the filter of two other characters. So you learn about him through other people's perceptions. He is initially the subject of journalism, so the subject of an series of interviews by a journalist called Susan, and she initially kind of mocks him a little bit. She's a New York type who sees herself as higher class than him, but as she starts to sort of really get invested in his passion for the hunt for this plant, she starts to realise that actually the thing he has, this ability to get up and be enthusiastic every morning for this amazing creation of nature, is actually something she's lacking in her own life. So she actually starts to fall in love with that. So you see this changing of this character based purely on her perceptions of him and how she's writing about him. And then on top of that, both Susan and John are being written about by the playwright Charlie Kaufman, who's also put himself in the movie. So you've also got this extra element of not knowing at any point what bits of the character of John LaRoche are actually true, and which bits are actually all done through the filter of two other people writing about him. And I think that's something I haven't seen done much in fiction, or certainly that was one that I encountered that and found that very powerful way of showing character as how other people put them together. And the other thing I found interesting about him is he's a character who wants to learn about things to this incredible degree, and then once he's learned everything about a topic, he then can let it go. And I think so often we define characters by the idea of obsessions and goals and hanging on to things, but we don't actually look at characters much through their ability to let go. And he is a character that can absolutely do that. And then you can then extrapolate and say, well, how would he be in a relationship? How is he in other aspects of his life? Does he just let go in the same way? I think there would be hopefully an attempt at things that are healthy for you with lots of vitamins and minerals. I would imagine they would be high in protein, so probably a lot of beans, and I think there would be probably a fairly decent stockpile of vitamin supplements in that bunker, and vitamin D particularly. Oh gosh, that's actually a hard question because I watch so much. I've become very interested in Charlie Kaufman's movies, so I would be upset to miss a movie called Synecdoche, New York. I've been trying to track down. Yeah, I want to give a shout out to my friend Jodine in Western Australia. She's read everything I've ever written, and also my friends in Canberra, Australia.